Time now for a look at what's making the headlines in the newspapers. Oliver Farry joins me. Oliver, good morning to you. Not surprisingly, Nepal is dominating the headlines.
That's right. The earthquake on Saturday afternoon has already claimed more than 2,400 lives. It's the country's worst earthquake since 1934. Liberation's front page has a rather stark image of rescue workers standing on rubble. The headline reads, "The roof of the world caved in." The newspaper's editorial inside is titled simply "Terror." It quotes the Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami, who wrote a book called After the Quake, which was about the 1995 Kobe earthquake in his native country. He says, "Earthquakes are strange things. We're convinced intellectually that the ground beneath our feet is firm and stable. We even say they have their feet on the ground when we're talking about somebody who's solid. But one fine day we realise it's all wrong. The earth, the rocks, which should be stable, are twisted in all ways as if they're liquid." Now, the paper continues saying that the response to earthquakes often depends on a country's resources. A rich country like Japan has been able to recover quite easily from successive earthquakes, whereas Haiti in 2010 suffered 200,000 deaths and was devastated. Nepal is also a poor country, not quite as poor as Haiti, but the tourist sites will probably be back up and running soon, says Libération, even if some of the damage is irreparable. But they say that the towns and villages of the isolated regions will have a lot more difficulty overcoming the shock and the chaos.
Well, as you say, Oliver, there has been quite a lot of talk about how Nepal, such a poor country, has been badly equipped to deal with this disaster.
That's right. Le Figaro takes this angle. It speaks of an earthquake that was dreaded but ill prepared for. It quotes a geologist who says that the earthquake was not a surprise. We knew Kathmandu was very close to another big quake. The Earth's crust, he says, can become deformed and withstand force like a plastic ruler if you bend it. But after a minute, the ruler breaks. And this was the same case in Kathmandu. 10,700 people died in the last big earthquake, which we said was 1934, and the city has known many over the centuries. In fact, it was entirely razed to the ground in 1255. The Kathmandu Valley is very vulnerable because of the nature of the ground. It's built on an old, dried-out lake, so the soil is made up of sediment and it quickly becomes incoherent when a quake strikes. Le Figaro also says that Nepal's rapid population growth, 6.5% per year, has also facilitated rapid development. The NGO Geohazards International has criticised the Nepalese government for not really controlling all this, and it says that there needs to be new building laws to guard against earthquakes to be drawn up.
Talk us through, if you will, Oliver, some of the damage to the cultural heritage, of which there is much in Nepal.
That's right. The Catholic daily La Croix speaks of an irremediable cultural loss. The damage in many cases is irreversible. Durbar Square and the 19th century Darahara, which is a white tower, have been destroyed. These are both UNESCO heritage sites. Many of the buildings were built over centuries by the Newars, the indigenous people of the Kathmandu Valley. UNESCO says it's a unique blend of Hinduism, Buddhism and Tantrism. The Darahara has already been rebuilt after the 1934 earthquake. That could happen again, but a country as poor as Nepal may find that a challenge, but it is also heavily reliant upon tourism.
All right, if we move away from Nepal for a second, here in France, the papers are looking at François Hollande and his re-election bid.
That's right. Le Figaro says that Hollande is already preparing for 2017. The head of state is trying to methodically win over the electorate with a number of strategic presidential visits and a new communication strategy. François Hollande is obsessed by 2017. They say he's trying to win over the people, and he's been very careful to strike a balance between trips abroad and trips within France. He'll celebrate his 3rd anniversary in the Élysée Palace in early May. It hasn't been the happiest of presidencies. He continues to be unpopular, and he also, Le Figaro says, has to provide an answer to the question, why a second term? Sources even within his own Socialist Party are saying they're not assured that he's winning over them, never mind the country as a whole.
So François Hollande clearly treading very carefully there, Oliver. He's even promised that if he doesn't reverse unemployment, which is at an all-time high, he won't run.
That's right, something the media have been very quick to remind us of. Le Parisien on its front page says unemployment is the president's poisoned promise. He has boxed himself into a corner, they say, because he's not managed to deliver on his promises to halt the rise in joblessness. Now, it's something that's become made even more difficult by the fact that 3 consecutive months of a fall in the unemployment rate would actually be necessary for him to be able to keep his promise, or in fact able to run. Now, there are plenty on the left who really don't take this seriously. They say it's just typical populist politicking, say that he will run. Now, that's probably not going to be a problem within the Socialist Party, but for the electorate as a whole, they might feel a little bit betrayed by that, and it could be disastrous on the campaign trail. Now, once again, Prime Minister Manuel Valls is considered the strongest option for the Socialists. We've already known this for the country as a whole. He's higher in the polls than most of the right-wing possible candidates. But even within the Socialist Party now, he's also considered the front runner. Libération reports that he is the preferred candidate among party members. That's ahead of Martine Aubry, the former party leader, who's on 19%, and she even knocks Hollande into third place. So the president could face multiple battles before he even gets on the ballot in 2017.
Okay, so clearly a lot of work there for François Hollande to do ahead of those elections. Oliver Farry, thanks for keeping us up to date with the papers.